All right, welcome back to another edition of Jacques Talk. I am with a veteran sports writer in the Baton Rouge market. You know him very well, Scott Rabalais. Scott, thanks for making some time.
Thank you, Jacques. Of course, veteran means old, but I appreciate the sentiment nonetheless.
That's not true, is it?
It's getting to be.
How long have you been at the Advocate?
I started at the State Times, our afternoon paper, in 1989.
Okay.
And then that paper folded in 1991, went to work for the Advocate, left for 2 years, worked for our website, worked in Ascension Parish as a public information officer, came back in 2010. So 30 of the last 32 years. We strive for accuracy.
There's a small window in there. That's like Steve Schneider at Channel 9. Steve left for a small period of time, but he's basically been there for 37, almost 40 years, something like that. So the good ones we have that have stuck around in Baton Rouge. So we have another coaching search, Scott, and I feel like every coaching search gets a little crazier than the previous, and that's because of social media now and people. Coach O called it a microwave society, not a Twitter society, but just your thoughts, man. I mean, we sat through Curly Hallman 4 straight losing seasons, and Coach O, the greatest season arguably in college football history, he's out less than 2 years later.
Yeah, it's shocking in a way because, and I think when people look at it from a national perspective, like he just won the national championship less than 2 years ago. But I think Scott Woodward came in here as athletic director 2 years ago, not being the guy who hired Ed. Of course, that was Joe Oliva, and didn't like the direction the program was going in. 5-5 last year. You could kind of write that off, but I think the wheels really started turning in motion, when they lost to UCLA, and then especially they lost to Auburn, and things kind of built up. And look, every AD was to hire his guy, and Scott's from here. He's an LSU guy. He's from Baton Rouge. Deep down, he had to want to do this, and honestly, he's looking for an excuse to fire Orgeron, but it didn't take a lot of persuading, I think. So, this is his legacy. It's great to hire Kim Mulkey. It's great to hire Jay Johnson or whoever, but this is what he's going to be remembered for, and this is a huge hire. This is enormously important, not only for LSU football, but the whole athletic program, especially with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC by 2025.
Scott, I kind of feel like it's the same talk with presidential elections. Every presidential election, this is the most important presidential election of our lifetime. And I think the same thing is kind of true with LSU at football coaching hires. The next one is always the most important. We got to get this one right. Just real quick, circling back to Joe Oliva, who said the same thing, that my legacy will be defined by this hire at LSU. And what a strange 5 years for Coach Orgeron, right? 9-3 his first year. They give up the touchdown pass to Notre Dame, or they're 10-3, and the roof kind of could have caved in on him. I was thinking back.
Remember when on the hot seat in 2018? Yeah.
Remember A&M really came after Aranda, right? And Jimbo had just become the head coach, and they said Aranda almost left, but he stays. And I remember going to that spring game in spring of 2018, watching Justin McMillan, Miles Brennan, and Lowell Narcisse play quarterback, saying, "Whew, this doesn't look so great. This could be a rough year." Joe Burrow comes in, and the rest is history. But the greatest season ever yet, he delivers that national championship. But man, there are holes in the roster right now, and there are problems for LSU with 5 losses here, 4-5 here in mid-November.
Yeah, 9-10 combined the last 2 years. Like, I was asked is Orgeron leaving the program better than you found it? And that's a good question. And I think in some ways, no. I mean, you can't dispute that national championship season. And he hired Joe Brady, and he recruited Joe Burrow. And maybe if you'd landed Tom Herman, as they wanted to, or Jimbo Fisher the year before, maybe you don't get that national championship. Maybe you have more consistency. But like at Georgia, they've been great. They've been very good, but not great. I think they'd trade where they've been for what LSU has had. That said, you've got to fight your way back up that mountain, and again, what makes the hire so important is you're not bringing in 2 Vanderbilts from in Texas and OU. You're bringing in 2 blue bloods of college football, especially Oklahoma, and so it's a fight to stay relative and stay competitive at that highest level that's now demanded at LSU. After the 20 years you had before last year. People are not going back to 7-5 is not going to cut it anymore, and 8-4 is not going to cut it. It's got to be someone who succeeds at a very high level, and LSU has a chance. Believe it or not, Nick Saban won't coach at Alabama forever. Yeah, he's talking about coaching 10 more years. I heard someone tell me he might have signed his last contract. Maybe it's going to be only 2 or 3 more years, more realistically. You need to be poised as a football program to try to be the dominant program, because Alabama can't hire anybody better. So you've got to be poised to take over and try to be that, if not the dominant power, among the most dominant powers in the conference, which will mean you'll be among the best powers in the country.
Yeah, we just went to Tuscaloosa over the weekend, and you think about it, Alabama, I guess, has had, you could say, the greatest coach in college football history twice, right, with Paul Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. But along the way, they had their Ray Perkins, their Bill Currys, the Mikes, Mike Price, Mike Dubose. Mike Price never coached a game, did he?
Dennis Franchione left them for A&M.
That's right.
Yeah,
he did. Mike Shula, good coaches, had success. Gene Stallings, real solid coach. He only won us one national championship. So anyway, we hope that fans hope one day Alabama at least starts to dip a tad. Nick Saban's going to start going 10-2, and the game's going to pass him by, right? Exactly. He's just going to Sugar Bowls instead of playoffs or whatever. So you wrote an article today about guys who are candidates for the job. Jimbo Fisher is a fascinating guy, and my joke is he's like the Olympics. He's coming around every 4 years with LSU, right?
I wish I'd written that. That's true.
So in 2005, when Les Miles got hired, I think he was around 40 years old at the time, maybe viewed a tad too young, maybe not quite ready yet. Nick Saban didn't Nick Saban say Houston Nut? That was like his suggestion or something like that, I think. But anyway, so Jimbo not quite ready at the time. And then Les Miles, of course, 2015, I guess you can thank President F. King Alexander and some of the people higher ups that kind of cut that off at the pass, right, with Jimbo?
Yes. Yeah, people might blame Olivo on that, but I think it was the higher up saying, we can't go to the legislature and ask for more money if you're spending all this money to buy out a coach, So, no, try to make it work. And they tried for a few more games, obviously, in 2016 and didn't. But I think Jimbo would have come. I think he was coming.
Yeah. Our photographer, Darren DeQuano, that day when LSU did the Tiger Walk, Les Miles gets off the bus at the top of the hill, and F. King Alexander walks up to him and shakes his hand and pats him on the back. And Darren was like, what was that? He never did that before. And maybe that was the sign right there that Les was safe that day against Texas A&M. So Jimbo, there was a slight flirtation when Orgeron got the job in 2016, but I think he may felt kind of burned about the year before, right?
Yes, I think both sides probably did a little bit. And then he finally goes to Texas A&M, hired by Scott Woodward, of course, for $75 million over 10 years, guaranteed, with no buyout clause. They just bumped his contract up to $9 million a year, still no buyout clause. It's a staggering amount of money that they're throwing around. And then, look, LSU can't hope to get him for more money than Texas A&M can throw at him. I mean, those people are just swimming in oil money and endowments and all that stuff. The lure has to be working for Scott Woodward again. There's a relationship there. These two guys came up together when Jimbo was Nick's offensive coordinator. Scott was working for Mark Emmert on the university side of things back in the early 2000s. He does like it here. He said there recently he likes it here, and just the thinking that, if you're Texas A&M, Big Brother is always over there to the west, and that's the University of Texas. And despite what they might think or what they might say at A&M, Texas is bigger. Texas has more fans. Texas has more clout. Texas certainly has more tradition. I mean, Texas A&M hasn't won a national championship since the 1930s.
39, huh? I think I saw that.
Yeah, I think so. So, there's got to be that kind of feeling like, you'll be number 2 again in the state. And at LSU, you're not. I mean, you're the big fish in a smaller pond, obviously, but a pond that's just teeming with talent. So I think those things could be appealing for Jimbo. Obviously, he can't say he has a bad situation if he decides to stay in College Station, but I think he's the apple of Woodward's eye. I think he's the guy he would like to hire most. As someone told me, Scott wants to bring the band back together, and this obviously is the biggest piece.
Jimbo Fisher got asked about the job a while back, LSU job this year. And I know Jimbo talks fast, but he escalated it. He was even more caffeinated that day. I mean, look, love my university, love my chancellor, love my ranches here, love my foundation. I mean, he was just talking 100 miles an hour.
Said very carefully, I intend to fulfill my contract. It's not what exactly we call in the business a non-denial denial, but it was one of those things that's like, people don't really like to, coaches are good at not telling the truth, obviously, to recruits, to the media, to whatever. Yeah. But people don't really, deep down, Jacques, in my experience, they don't really want to lie, or at least completely.
Right.
And it seemed like he was leaving himself a little bit of an out there. Again, I'm not saying he's going to definitely be the guy, but But I think if any place he would, I don't know if he'd leave for any place else other than LSU for Texas A&M. I'll say it that way.
I saw a lot of incorrect headlines too. Jimbo shoots down LSU.
Not true at all.
No.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and he's sitting there. It must be nice, Scott, to work in a profession where every time you get a question, it might bump your salary up. Just sit there and quiet. Oh, I don't know anything about this. Oh, they want me? Oh, that's interesting, Well, we got to pay him. See, just to ramble real quick, I always find that fascinating. Why are they giving a guy a $75 million contract? Well, to win big. Then he wins a little bit, and, well, we got to give him a raise. Got to bump that up, the rich get richer all the time, and, the charity organizations, Scott, they fight and they scrap and claw to raise money, and then here's $16 million to Gus Malzahn to go away. It almost gets gross, with the buyouts and everything.
It does. Orgeron is getting $16.9 million, and his staff, it could be over $8 million to buy out his staff if you have to buy everyone out. It's a lot of money, and of course that enhances the appeal for Jimbo Fisher, who can walk away from Texas A&M should he choose to do so for nothing.
And with that much money, Scott, he can not only buy a hamburger, he can come to L'Auberge buffet here and get the $18.95 buffet.
He could go for the crab claws, I think, as well. Yeah, he probably could splurge for that.
So Jimbo, I feel like, is a safe hire. I feel like if they hire Jimbo, they're not going to have any more 5-loss seasons. I think he'll keep him in that pocket of 10-2, 9-3, and then maybe get a chance to challenge Alabama there. And then if Nick Saban does get out, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years, and Jimbo moves into his 60s, then maybe he could be at LSU for a decade from 60 to 70 or something like that and have a lot of success. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the thing that, in a very general sense, that you think of with Jimbo Fisher. Maybe he doesn't have as high a ceiling as some of the coaches you might pursue, but he has a pretty stable floor that they're not going to have a year like they're having right now at LSU. Now, it started out pretty bad. They lost.
A couple.
They lost their Hayes King, their quarterback. They struggled to beat Colorado. They lost 2 in a row, but they've won every game since then. And over the last 2 years, the 17-3 combined overall, going to their game with Ole Miss Saturday.
He's recruiting very strong there too. He's got a strong recruiting class.
A chance to win the West. If Alabama loses one more game, loses to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and I think you'd agree, Alabama doesn't quite look as great as they usually do.
Yeah.
They could go to Atlanta.
Yeah. Definitely not invincible, and Auburn's going to host that Iron Bowl this year. And whatnot. And so Jimbo Fisher, that talk is out there. And then the huge splash hire, talking to people, would be Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. The young offensive coach is really in vogue these days, and he is that. He's made the playoffs 3 times at Oklahoma. He's lost to an SEC team each time. His record overall is spectacular, 54-8, I think.
54-8, yeah.
And he's coming to the SEC regardless, right? Whether he comes to LSU, he sticks with Oklahoma. So I guess there's defensive questions with him, that the style there is a little soft, and you can't just go into these shootouts every weekend and expect to win in the SEC. But so that would be I don't want to compare him to Kim Mulkey, but it would be one of those big splash hires.
It probably would be the splashiest, I would think, overall, because they've been there every year. They've won the Big 12 every year. Of course, they're undefeated again. They're 8th in the CFP rankings this week, but they've been in that position before and made the rankings, made the playoffs. The knock is that maybe the Big 12 obviously is not as good as the SEC. It's a little easier to win there, and he's, like you said, he's gone to the playoffs every time and lost. And of course, everyone remembers, 2 years ago they got crushed by LSU in the Peach Bowl in the semis. Kind of like people said when they hired Nick Saban in 1999. Well, didn't we just beat that guy in the Independence Bowl a few years ago? And
with the Coke bottle glasses.
Yeah, he's going 6-5 until this year, and now he's got all that.
Yeah.
But Lincoln Riley, it does kind of fit that Sean McVay kind of mold, kind of vibe. Now, it was again like with Saban, there might be a concern that he might want to go to the NFL one day, but. You think, I always try to think of people's motivations, Jacques, and my question about Lincoln Riley, trying to get in his head, what would be his motivation to leave Oklahoma, a program with great tradition, a program that's winning, a program that's coming to the SEC? I'm thinking, if I'm him, I'm thinking, I have those 3 teams and we got to beat every time, and the last one really beat our brains in. And it's not going to get any easier when we go to the SEC. And they've won 3 national titles there, ups and downs at LSU, more than Oklahoma. We won 3 national titles since we won our last one at OU. And maybe if we don't win one before we leave the Big 12, it's maybe not be so easy for Oklahoma to be in that national hunt every year again. So obviously you've seen you can do it here at LSU. And obviously the money will be great. He's making $7.5 million there. Oklahoma, I'm sure, would match to a certain point. But if there really is a $100 million 8-year offer out there, which is $12.5 million a year, you would think it would have to be that kind of money for a guy like Lincoln Riley. I know it's staggering to think about. But let's remember this. I say this to you and everybody else, and I think you would agree with me. It seems unbelievable. Scott Woodward is not limited by his imagination. He's not limited by his imagination in terms of what he could pay or who he could go after. And I think we in the media, and I think fans should realize that too. Now, does that mean he's going to get, the next Nick Saban? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that he could get someone who you go, wow, I didn't expect that, like Kim Mulkey, or something like that.
Yeah, and all you got to do is look at his hires so far. I know we've talked about it a lot, but, Kim Mulkey leaving Baylor, I've joked about it a few times. I had a friend text me right when the talk started. There's a 0.005 chance this is happening. Don't get excited. She ain't leaving. And every day I kept waiting for Baylor, to announce Mulkey stays, big raise. But she came. She's here. And quite a debut against Nicholls State, 82-40. They're going to be a player immediately, it appears. And then Jay Johnson, and I'm just trying to think who's the Jay Johnson out there in the college football ranks where we're all talking about these people, but the real guy's over here. I don't know if that guy's out there. Mel Tucker, when Michigan.
Mel is that guy?
Yeah. Well, Michigan State, when they beat Michigan a couple weeks ago, there was a national talk show host that said, Michigan State fans, enjoy that guy while you can because he's going to be the next coach at LSU. He's going to be the next coach at LSU. Now, his window as being a head coach is very small. This is only his third year being a head coach. And so he doesn't have a whole lot of hay in the barn in that regard, but he has been an assistant in the pros. He's been an assistant recently at Alabama and Georgia. So, he knows the area and being in the SEC and all that. The question is and obviously he'd be a historic hire. LSU's never had an African-American head coach in football, and they've got their first African-American president and the first African-American president in the SEC, period. So he would be a historic hire in that regard. But is he the best man for the job?
I wrote a column last week saying, Jacques, since Paul Dietzel left in 1961, so 60 years, LSU's had 10 football coaches, only three of them who weren't fired. One was Bo Ryan, who died, of course, in a plane crash. The other was Bill Arnsparger, left to be the AD at Florida. The other was Nick Saban, of course, who went to the Dolphins. Not to Alabama, folks. He went to the Dolphins for 2 years. Then he went to Alabama. What do Arnsparger and Saban have in common? No BS guys with NFL experience, defensive guys, very detail-oriented, very much, all football all the time.
A little terse with the media.
A little terse with the media. Yes, absolutely. Mel Tucker strikes me as that kind of guy. He was a GA for Nick Saban at Michigan State. He was on Nick's first staff here at LSU as the DB's coach. He later coached for Nick at Alabama. Coach was Kirby Smart's defensive coordinator at Georgia, who of course coached here at LSU for Nick as well. And I don't think they coached together at LSU, but he's Tucker and Smart. I think Kirby was at the end.
2004.
Yeah. So a very similar track record. And of course, again, remember, Nick Saban was not Nick Saban when LSU hired him. People said, he's that guy everybody says is going to be great, but he hasn't been great yet.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing with Mel Tucker. I heard from someone who said, this guy's doing a phenomenal job at Michigan State. Yeah, last year they had a losing record, but they remember last year the Big Ten, they weren't going to play until the spring of this year, and then they finally decided to play, and they played a limited schedule, and that sort of thing. So the whole thing was kind of messed up. And then this year, they just lost to Purdue, and they gave up a lot of passing yards and stuff. But overall, if they can go 10-2 and make a New Year's Six bowl game, that's a heck of a thing. And talk about a school that you're always little brother. That's Michigan State in a nutshell. If you have any affinity, now he's from Cleveland, Ohio originally. Maybe he likes the Midwest, but if you have any affinity for the SEC and want to compete at the highest level, and of course make a really big payday. I think they're paying him $5.5 million a year right now at Michigan State. Not bad money, but money that LSU could surpass by millions. Then you think about doing this. Now the big drawback I think is probably the fact that he's been at 2 different jobs over the last 3 years, and this would be another move so quickly. And I think nobody likes to do that. Maybe do that to their family and that sort of thing. So those motivations are ones that no one really knows about, except maybe their agent or something like that. But I think Mel Tucker is a guy who you'd be kind of betting on the come. as they say in the casino, you'd be kind of betting on what could be instead of what has been.
Yeah.
But he's the same age as Nick Saban was. There's a lot of similarities there. I'm not saying he's going to be Nick Saban. There's not going to be another Nick Saban for anybody. But there's a lot of similarities there, and I think he could be that guy if LSU just take a little bit of a chance, and they're all a chance that could pay off handsomely.
How much time we got? Check your watch real quick here before he's going on Feinbaum here in a little bit. So
we have some
few more minutes.
We have
Okay.
a few more minutes. Yes.
The Lane Kiffin talk, that's died down. Haven't heard much about Lane lately, and there were people all along that said not a Scott Woodward type hire, and then after Ed Orgeron, does the athletic director have to be calling the coach to the principal's office again for being a little mischievous or fun or whatever?
He knew nothing about those tweets from the Ole Miss football Twitter account directed at Hugh Freeze, of course. Knew nothing about that. Okay. I just don't. I'm in that camp. I just don't think that Scott is a high drama kind of guy, and with Lane, there's always going to be something. It's going to be something. They're throwing the golf balls at him at Tennessee, or there's the Twitter stuff here or there. It's always going to be some kind of extra drama. LSU doesn't need a character or a caricature. They've had that the last 5 years. Whatever you want to say about Ed Orgeron. They
and
need
Les Miles before.
Sure, yeah, with the hat and the in the grass and all. Yeah, they I think, lack of a better term, as far as Lane Kiffin goes, I think Scott Woodward wants to hire a grown-up, and I don't think Lane Kiffin is all that.
The tweets, you being in the scribe business, is that being a ghostwriter? You think he kind of wrote those tweets on the side? They said that's good stuff, Lane. We'll take
Somebody told me who covers Ole Miss, if there's misspellings in the tweets, Lane actually did them. If they're not, it's by somebody else. That's what someone told me who covers the Rebels. I don't know if that's true.
Typos. Billy Napier, fantastic job at UL Lafayette. No one can say anything really negative about Billy Napier. Just maybe, and even if it is considered negative, maybe it's just not his time. Maybe he needs to hit a job between an LSU and a UL Lafayette. Although he's turned down big jobs already in the SEC. Apparently Auburn, had some conditions. Hey, you got to keep this guy, which would be interesting at LSU. Who stays with LSU? Corey Raymond has been there. That's the one guy, right, every time. Sam Nader's stepping aside. So
he's the new Sam Nader,
he's the new Sam Nader. And some people say, well, Mickey Joseph and his New Orleans connections, and Kevin Falk's just getting going in this coaching thing and has some strong New Orleans, has some strong Louisiana roots, obviously, and is a LSU legend. So we'll see about all that. But yeah, Napier, it seems like the talk is 4 or 5 people would have to say no before it would fall to him.
I think so. I think you hit it exactly right. And this job just filled, so it's kind of not the greatest example, but go to a Texas Tech. Go to a school like that, a Power 5, a lower level Power 5, and win there, and then let's talk. I think he's an excellent coach. I think he would come. He's making $2 million a year, of course, at Lafayette. Yeah. I think he would definitely come. LSU could multiply his salary many times over. I just think that's just not the Woodward, again, not in the Woodward MO to make that kind of hire. Yeah. He hired Chris Peterson from Boise State to Washington, but Chris Peterson had won at a big level. They'd been in those big bowl games, beat Oklahoma and stuff like that. So that was a little different, I think. I don't think it would be a bad hire. I think Napier could probably win. I just don't think he's going to get that far down the list, and I think Billy's far down the list.
Jimmy Yacht's joke is, if Nick Saban was coaching for the Raging Cajuns, LSU was not going to hire the Raging Cajuns coach. There is that element of snootiness in there to an extent. There is,
but I don't think it's so much because he's their coach. I think is that anyone at that level. If he was doing this at Southern Miss, there's no animus with Southern Miss really with LSU people. I think they'd still be like, go win somewhere else first and then come back and see us.
Exactly. You can't do like me and work in Alexandria and then get promoted to Baton Rouge. I was supposed to hit Lafayette somewhere in the middle, and then the growing pains were Channel 9's problem for a while. So, and then Aranda, still kind of just only his second year as head coach and his first year's in the COVID season. So
right. Again, doing well this year. Just lost, of course, but overall doing well. This is just my feeling. It's nothing anyone's told me. I think it's got to be a soft spot for Dave Aranda, right? He's a good guy, very serious, very football-oriented. Kind of reminds you of a Vulcan a little bit. Never heard him yell once. Did you ever hear him yell, raise his voice one time at practice? Now, we weren't there for the whole time, obviously, but not once I ever hear him raise his voice at practice. And I've always thought he's interesting to listen to. I would enjoy covering Dave Aranda as a head coach. I can't promise you he'd be the biggest winner or something like that, but I think he's doing good. It's just, again, not much of a sample size there, but there's got to be some sentimentality for Aranda if some of these other candidates don't work out, that he gets a shot, right? There's got to be something, and I think his family would like coming back.
Scott, I could always see Aranda in a Star Wars movie as one of those Jedis, just put him in a robe, the real tempered, measured, don't rise to anger,
I'm in the Force and the Force is in me, or something like that, yeah.
Right. So, and one guy, I'll just keep bringing this guy up because every time I do, people say, no. But he's out there. Mario Cristobal at Oregon, with his background in offensive lineman and coaching at Alabama and everything, could he be the guy that no one's talking about? But apparently he's a lot like Ed Orgeron, the fact he's a CEO. He's never been a mind on either side of the ball in terms of being an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. He's up there at Oregon, and they've got a lot of money up there, and he's won a lot.
Recency bias is on his side. I mean, he's got the best win in the country this year. They won at Ohio State this year. They're in the rankings right now for the college football playoff. They're carrying the banner for the Pac-12 at the moment, and obviously Oregon's a place where they have pretty deep pockets too. But he's been all over the country, so I think a move from there to here would be a shock.
Yeah.
That could be. I mean, look, like I said, I named three top people in my column today that I think are the three top people. Doesn't mean it have to be one of those. And if it's a Mario Cristobal, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. It really wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, look, I appreciate your time, and it'll be fascinating to watch what happens with that. And the timeline on this, they got to get it done. Jimbo's going to play Ed Orgeron on the regular season finale. He couldn't step to the podium on Monday and be the new head coach, could he? But, I mean, signing day is what, December 12th, 13th, something like that, the first signing day?
Yeah.
You need to get a guy in place a week or two before that, right?
You would think so. I mean, you're certainly looking at their early December. That's why, like, timing is a part of these things, too. It's not just the guy. It's not just the money. It's not just what kind of situation he's in, where he is. Timing is part of it, and sometimes it's not good timing. Luke Fickell's a great example. They're not in the playoff right now, but what if they get in there? Well, I don't think Luke Fickell's going to leave for anything.
He's never left the state of Ohio, has he?
Right. I don't think he's going to leave for anything, especially not to leave for his team to be in the playoffs. And just to be clear, the playoff semifinals are on New Year's Eve this year. I think it's the cotton and the orange. You're waiting. That takes you well past the first signing day, and that's where you're signing most of your players now. Of course, is in December. You're signing 3/4 of your class then. So LSU's trying to it's important to get someone in there and try to salvage that class right away. And so I don't think you're waiting that long. Matt Rule, the name has come up. Who's the Carolina Panthers. He'd have to leave before the end of the season. There's no tampering for colleges with NFL coaches like the Saints. If they wanted a coach, couldn't go talk to him until the season was over. But in the colleges, there's no such thing. And remember, Bobby Petrino left with the Falcons to go coach Arkansas, but we left them high and dry. It doesn't look good, but if he decided, like Saban after a couple of years, the NFL's not for me. Wouldn't be a bad hurry either.
The Saints whipped the Falcons on Monday Night Football, and he was doing woo pig suey like on Wednesday night that same week.
That was the most unconvincing woo pig suey I've ever seen. It's like, you people really do this? You grown people? All right.
Scott, thanks for joining me, man.
Jacques, a pleasure. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, finally got to do it. And next time or whenever down the road, we're going to talk about the Masters. We're going to talk about golf. We're heading into the winter, Scott. So maybe when springtime rolls around again.
That would be fantastic. It's on CBS if y'all hadn't noticed. It is. It's a year-to-year contract. Well, Augusta National keeps CBS on a year-to-year contract for 56 years or something.
Yeah, I think we've got it. SEC football, on the other hand, sore subject at WAFB and the people who own us. There's a lot of things they would rather lose than the SEC, I'll tell you that. But we'll enjoy it as well as long as we have it. I'm Jacques Ducey for Scott Rabalais. Thanks for dropping by. Don't forget to subscribe to our WAFB YouTube page and like and share this content. We'd appreciate it.